Welcome to Intrepid. Thank you for purchasing this guide. Today we are doing a masterclass on how to fill out a winning cost volume for an SBIR proposal. We will walk you through all of the information you need, how to calculate hours and rates without getting disqualified, and common mistakes that those new to SBIR and government contracting make so that you don't get stuck. The cost volume is what most people would call the budget, and it is a line-by-line breakdown of all of the labor hours, materials, supplies, equipment, profit, overhead, and subcontractors you are proposing to get the scope of work done. This budget information is submitted on DSIP for DoD proposals and ProSAMS for NASA. Other agencies will have their own portals, but the requirements are all fairly similar. For DoD, the budget information is called Volume 3, and unfortunately, I can't screen share directly in DSIP, so I'm using a publicly available guide instead, which is also linked in your download package. If you complete the fields in our Volume 3 Excel template, you will have everything you need and more to submit a complete and winning cost volume into DSIP. Plus, this sheet is shareable, making it easier to collaborate with consultants and subcontractors. Getting into the guide, we have 6 tabs. Make sure you read all the Getting Started notes here on the first tab. Information on tabs 2 through 5 auto-populate cells on tab 6. So if possible, go through these from left to right. Moving on to the Questions tab, before you enter any cost information, you will be asked a series of questions that determine what fields you have available in the rest of the cost volume. Let's go through those. First, select what additional costs you have, if any. The options include subcontractors, materials, supplies, equipment, travel, TABA, and other. Air Force doesn't offer TABA, so if you are doing an Air Force proposal, that option will be grayed out. Next, you have to decide if you want to be paid in monthly progress payments or on a milestone schedule that you set. If you want a steady payment schedule, select the monthly payment option. If you are delivering bigger deliverables up front or have varying costs over the period of performance, select milestones. Next, enter overhead if your company has an established overhead cost or rate. If you don't, we recommend using fully burdened rates. So you could do this by setting this value to 0. Next, select whether you want this applied to travel. If you are using fully burdened rates like we recommend, just say no. Moving on to G&A. If known, enter that here. If you don't have a G&A rate established, set this to 0 and answer no to the remaining questions. Next is cost sharing and profit. Most companies will not have a cost sharing requirement, so set this to 0. If you are proposing a joint venture with cost sharing, you would enter that information here. For profit, we set the default rate to 8% in our guides. Government does not like to award to companies that don't have a profit margin because they aren't likely to succeed long term. On the flip side, they don't want to make an award to a company that has a hefty profit margin because from their perspective, it isn't a good use of taxpayer money. Acceptable profit margins are 5 to 10%. So if possible, budget that in, but regardless, make sure you answer this question accurately. Moving on to tab 3, labor. This is where you provide all of the details for the people working on the contract. For key personnel, you need to provide their role and their full name. For non-key personnel, you only need to provide the role. If named key personnel change between the time that you submit the proposal and the contract award, you will have to justify with your contracting officer to put someone else on the project. So make sure whoever you list here as key personnel is unlikely to change. DSIP will make you select a labor category for each person. The ones shown here are all the options you will have in DSIP, so select the one that is the closest fit. You also need to provide years of experience, education level, and if there is a fringe rate. Again, if you don't have established fringe rates, just use fully burdened rates and set fringe to 0. The names and roles here will auto-populate cells on subsequent tabs. So if you need to make edits, make sure you come back here. Moving on to tab 4, materials. If you're going to procure materials or supplies under the contract, list them here. You will need to specify a vendor, a quantity, cost, whether the material is exclusive for the contract, whether it was competitively sourced, whether it's consumable, and if you have any supporting documentation. Supporting documentation can be something as simple as a screenshot from the vendor or supplier's website showing cost. If you say no to supporting documents, you will be prompted to answer free text justification, and you can say something like supporting documentation available upon request. Tab 5 is for subcontractor information. If you are proposing subs, you will need the following information from them: contact information for the person responsible for the subcontract budget, a letter of commitment from the subcontractor, and the sub's budget breakdown. If you aren't proposing subs, you can skip this section. Tab 6 is the actual cost breakdown and where everything comes together. Names and roles for direct labor will auto-populate from tab 3. For each person, you need to enter their hourly rate and how many hours they will spend on the project. To justify hourly rate, you will need to show that it falls within the standard rates per GSA. To do this, go to the linked GSA website and search for the job title. GSA will provide hourly rate data for that role and a standard deviation low and a standard deviation high. For each role, copy that over into columns H, I, and J. If your hourly rate falls below the low end or above the high end, as noted in GSA, you will likely need to justify those rates. DoD does this to make sure you aren't paying yourself a ridiculously high salary or hardly paying yourself at all, or trying to get away with paying people less than minimum wage. Finally, for labor, select whether they are working for you, the prime contractor, or a subcontractor. If you have fringe or overhead rates, enter that information in lines 19 and 20. If you are using fully burdened rates, leave it at 0. Direct materials will auto-populate from tab 4. All you have to do is indicate if you are applying an overhead rate, and if not, leave it blank. Then we have travel. Some phase 1s, like NASA's, do not allow travel, so check the BAA before you propose travel. To justify your travel costs, enter the airport code from your point of origin and destination. Enter the number of days and the number of travelers. For airfare, indicate the airline in line 37 and provide the average commercial ticket cost. For lodging and meals and incidental expenses, or M&I, you will need to reference the allowed GSA rates for your destination. For example, if we were going to LA to visit Edwards Air Force Base, we would be allowed to expense $86 a day for meals and incidentals and $65.50 for travel days on the first and last day. So we would enter that in line 39. For car rental, reference the rental company in line 37 and provide the average daily cost based on your preferred car rental company. Repeat this for each trip you are proposing and enter the overhead rate in line 46 if you aren't using fully burdened rates. In the summary section, enter your G&A if you have one. If not, leave it blank. Profit will auto-populate from tab 2. Now you have all the information and justifications to enter an approved and winning cost volume into the submission portal. Before you close out, be sure to fill out the header information in rows 1 and 2 and then export the cost tab as a PDF. You can upload it into volume 5 as your additional cost information to make things easy for your reviewer. If you have any questions, please let us know so that we can keep improving these walkthroughs, and good luck on your proposal.